Uh, Welcome everyone to the December 18th Park and Rec Committee meeting. We'll do a quick roll call, so if you could just give us your name.
Yeah, Amanda Cahill.
Terry Cope.
Larry Schultz.
Mary Larson.
Okay. We do have a quorum. First item of business is the approval of the minutes from the prior regular meeting. So everybody had an opportunity to review the last meeting minutes.
Yes.
If so, would someone like to make a motion?
Sure. I move to approve the committee meeting minutes for October 16th, 2023.
I second.
Okay, motion's been made by Amanda, second by Mary, to approve the minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, motion carried, the minutes are approved. Next item are petitions, proclamations, suggestions, or complaints from citizens, committee members, or staff. There's nobody here from the public. Does anybody have anything to say from the committee? Anything you've heard?
No, nothing to report.
Okay. Just one thing maybe that I'd like to bring up. I mentioned after the last meeting to talk a little bit about the role of the committee in that. And I talked to Alyssa about that, and I learned that the council is considering how committees function and what their roles are and what goals are in that. And I thought it'd just be a good idea for us just to at least have not necessarily a conversation, but just inform you of that fact. And, I had suggested, and I think I'll let Alyssa speak for herself, but I think one of the things that we've had, we had a change in leadership, and I think one of the difficulties we've had is if the role's gonna change, then we need to know about it. And just to make it clear, because that clears up any misunderstandings, and committees can function different ways, and this is an opportunity to take a look at with the change in leadership of, perhaps doing things different ways, or maybe continuing to do it the way it was, but in the meantime, we're kind of in a state of flux, and I know that's caused some consternation amongst a number of us, if not all of us, from comments I've heard. So I thought I'd just share that with you, and I don't know if Alyssa, if you have anything to add.
I would love to. That's a great summary of our conversation, Chair. The only thing I would really like to note is, in part of that conversation, one of the items that we discussed is, one, having the ability or the place for us to be able to bring back articles and trends within the Parks and Recreation program. So we did, as part of that, make a permanent change to our agenda, and you've probably noticed that under this specific item. So we have item 4.1, which is where the committee has the ability to really bring those items forward. I think, as we use you all as our ambassadors to the community, you really hear what's going on and what the community's needs are, what trends are happening in the community regarding transportation. My mind might be elsewhere. Regarding recreation, regarding our parks, any concerns that the committee has had. So we're reserving this place to really be that opportunity for you to bring ideas forward. I think the pickleball courts are a great example of the community reaching out to their Parks and Rec, doing a petition, and bringing something forward to this committee formally for us to further review, and it landed us with a beautiful pickleball court set over at D-Town Park. But the other piece to that is making sure that staff is not the only one feeding input. We want to make sure that you really have that opportunity to share the things that you're hearing from the community. And it's not just staff looking for articles and bringing things that we find, because we know what we're looking for. And obviously, item 4.2 is our place to kind of bring those items forward. So we want to make sure that we really have a good balance, and it's not just a one-sided for information. So the other piece is making sure that we're letting you know of community updates, city news, and events. And Obviously, once we're done with item 4.1, and once the committee has that opportunity to share their thoughts, I can definitely speak more to some of the items that I have. Some of the items are, again, community events, but also related to the Parks and Recreation Director position, those job descriptions of the committee, which we discussed, and a few other things, so.
Okay, well then, I do have a question on 4.1, just so that I don't bring it up later, within our new business. Do you have, we touched on it, but then with the special session and we have some date changes to the calendar going forward for regular meeting schedule. Do you have, again, what is planned for the next few meetings? What, like, the agenda item is gonna be?
Great question, committee member and the rest of the committee. We have tentative items scheduled. We do have another development that might come to us in January, and we anticipate having that be a large discussion in January. For February and March, obviously, we review very similar things year after year. We have a Parks and Recreation annual report. We tend to look at trails during that time, so I anticipate that we're going to function on that schedule, at least in the interim, until we start really talking about our 2024 work plan.
Okay, so you foresee January a development item, and then maybe Feb for the trails?
It depends
Okay.
on where we're at, yes. I don't want to commit us to anything.
In March, like a work plan for the next year, 2024, okay.
Other comments, questions, concerns?
A related question, and maybe you could help with that, but in terms of the changing role, maybe I missed that because I missed the last meeting, so.
Okay, the conversation happened, I talked to Alyssa.
Oh, okay.
And so we, I think, came to a mutual conclusion that it would be helpful if we define whatever the new role of this committee will be, especially if it's different than the current role. So, you know, our expectations and staff expectations were on the same page. If we're not on the same page, that leads to some of the consternation and concerns maybe we've encountered over the last few months, where, you know, we may had a impression that things were gonna, you know, be like they always were, and maybe they will be, but you know, obviously they aren't right at the moment, but there's a process in place apparently,
Okay.
where the council and staff are working through the issues of the roles of the committee.
And not just our committee, this is like council initiative?
It is, and I can actually just jump right into
Okay.
that. So I'm going to skip through some of these and then come back. So I'm actually going to go to the bottom one. So it is called committee job descriptions, is what council has asked staff to do. So this is for all of our committees. And really it's to be more transparent on what committees do. The other piece to this is when people are applying for the committee, they don't necessarily know what the committees do. Obviously, we have a general summary of committees. There's ordinances that kind of get into that. But when it really comes to the day-to-day or what people can expect when going into these advisory committee roles, providing some better clarification is really what council is looking for. And I think it's a great thing for us to do. I think it's great for people that are interested in doing something like this. Obviously, it takes a lot of time out of your schedules, so people want to make sure that they know what they're signing up for before they do it. So that's just one piece to this. What we would like to do is we would like to have individual conversations with each of you and the city manager just to really understand what your goals are as individuals, but also let you know where we're kind of at with the job description. And then also we want to inform you about the Parks and Recreation Director position, the interview process. We are finalizing the job description for that position, and we're going to be posting it at the end of the week. So we want to just give you guys a little bit more information about that in an individual meeting. Obviously, we have open meeting requirements, so we don't want to break any of those rules. So I will follow up with each of you with a calendar invite, or just trying to understand where our calendars align and hopefully get something set up for the next couple of weeks or so. So we'll have more information on that, but I don't want to leave you hanging. We are really trying to get that information into your hands as soon as possible.
Is that director position changing?
It will change a little bit. The last time we've updated that director position was, well, 16 years ago. So we're revising it with the times and just making sure it really reflects on where we are as a community today. So there will be some changes to the job description, of course.
When do you think the council will have job descriptions for the committees?
We have a rough draft currently, so we'd like to review that with you now or as soon as possible so that we can get them going.
Okay,
Right?
great. Other comments? Anything else before we turn it over to Alyssa? Okay,
Well, since we're on the slide here, we'll jump up to the first bullet point, which is just to do a brief overview of the joint meeting we had with the Planning Commission team here earlier this month. I know some of you weren't able to attend. And I just wanted to give a recap. One, just because it was a very long meeting and you might not want to watch the entirety of it. And two, because it was occurred at a planning commission meeting, the planning commissioners are the ones that are formally going to review and adopt those minutes. So it's not going to come before this body. It's going to go to the planning commission. So I just wanted to do an update for each of you. So just as a quick review, the planning commission and the Parks and Recreation Committee met in this room to talk about park use of cannabis, THC products like your edibles, as well as tobacco use. Now, tobacco is a little odd one. The reason we included it in there is because in the city of Victoria, tobacco is not prohibited within our parks. And one of the biggest concerns we heard from our neighboring communities when it came to this conversation, watching other meetings, was smoking, specifically the smell of smoke, and that preventing people from enjoying the parks if you're not utilizing those substances or don't want to be near those substances. And through the conversation that we had with the committee, we went through why we're at this point. We went through state statute, where we are in our own municipal code. And just in hearing the discussion from both of those groups, it was very clear that the smoking piece overall was a big concern for our community. And so what we are gonna do as staff is we're gonna start redlining our ordinance to prohibit smoking of any substance within our park space. Consumption of like tobacco chew, edible marijuana, your THC gummies, those will still be allowed through this red line ordinance. And then what we will do once that's finalized, obviously bring it to our legal team, but then bring it back to both committees individually to review them and provide feedback before it goes to city council. So that's kind of the really quick summary of a really long meeting, but if you have any questions, I'm here for them. Or obviously Amanda and Larry, you were there as well, so if I missed anything or misspoke, please feel free to add.
I think the only thing that a good summary, I think the only thing that I would add was and you kind of alluded to it, was the health aspect of, why do we have parks? Part of it's to promote wellness and health and activity in that, and so that's one of the reasons that the group there there was a consensus around what Alyssa brought up as far as the regulation, but it'll come back to us again for further comment.
Yeah, I think, again, that, we have ordinances in place, and specifically like park ordinances in place to protect these parks. So it's also kind of like a protection of the areas, right? Like, so it's protecting the people within those boundaries and protecting like our park as a resource. So.
Okay.
All right, I'll actually go back a couple, start at the beginning now. So as part of this 401 item, it's also to bring city events and community events forward. Obviously, recreation is a big part of what you all do, so we want to make sure that some of our larger events or community events are at top of mind. So I anticipate bringing some of these events forward. Obviously, we're at the tail end of our season and everyone's entering the holidays, so our event schedule is very slim right now. We actually just had our largest Cap End event last week, or 2 weeks ago, sorry, which was Light Up Victoria. It was the largest event that we've had for that. We had probably close to 1,000 people. It was packed downtown, so we're obviously gonna relook at extending that. It's usually just been a 1 hour thing, just because we don't have a lot going on, but now we're looking at extending it for 2024. So it was a great event. There was great turnout, a lot of positive feedback, and obviously now we're looking for the future. But regarding what's upcoming events is our Donuts in Victoria series is back for 2024. If this is unfamiliar to you, it's an educational enrichment activity or program that we host monthly at the Recreation Center. It's at 9 to 10 a.m. There's free coffee and donuts, and really what it is city staff come and present on topics of various degrees or anything. Obviously for January, we're gonna be talking about snow plowing, de-icing, and just overall snow safety. And then in February, we're gonna talk about carbon monoxide safety. And the topics definitely vary. It's a really fun program. It tends to be very successful. Depending on the topic matter, we have more participants than other, but I think on average, we usually have about 8 to 10 people show up for that event every time. So if you're not busy in that 9 o'clock hour, and I know most of you are working individuals, so that probably doesn't work in your schedules, but if you are able to swing over, please feel free to add it to your schedule. And then the other thing I want to bring up is the winter 2024 program brochure is out. It should be in your mailboxes. So I just wanted to bring attention to that. Take a look, sign up for activities, and also play bingo. We included the bingo card. This may look familiar to some of you. This is something we started in 2023. It was a success. We did not include it in the recreation brochure last year. It was just something we did at the Recreation Center, but we've expanded it to really get people interested in being active, especially as we look at this new year and people are looking to do something to check off their New Year's resolution list. So. And then lastly on this item, as I just wanted to bring forward some upcoming meetings in 2024. Technically, the 2024 calendar is still in draft form. City Council has to legally approve that at their first meeting in January, so we're still working under this draft edition, but we do not anticipate any changes to the Parks and Recreation schedule for 2024. So I wanted to bring up the first 3 meetings in next year, and then after this in my recap meeting email, I will send you the draft public calendar so you have everything at your disposal. You don't have to write it down or take a screenshot. Now I will send these to you. But I did want to note for the first 2, because the first or the third Monday falls on a holiday, it is moved to that next Wednesday. And with that, Chair, I don't have any more updates. Thank you for that long-winded first item.
Okay. All right. We will move to the next item under new business, which is the review sketch plan for the Hometown Bank commercial development. Turn it over to Alyssa.
Yeah. So we have a sketch plat that has come forward to us regarding a commercial development, which is being brought forward by Hometown Bank. Just as an overview for sketch plat is one of the first presentations we have when it comes to developer review. There's a series of steps, and this is the very first one. And we use this opportunity before it goes into formal application to bring back any ideas or potential changes, and just to give feedback and guidance to the developer, again, before they really go through that first official plat application, which in what we term that as preliminary plat application. And then after it goes through preliminary plat, then it goes to City Council for final plat review, and then they can start actually construction on a project. So we're at the very, very beginning of this, looking at it for one of the first times out in the community. And again, this is really our opportunity to provide some feedback to the developer on things related to parks and recreation. So just as an overview for sketch plat review, there are no approvals and actions that are formally being taken at this meeting. For this item. It's specifically to provide feedback to the developer. And then the sketch plat process is just for that, again, to provide assistance. And then in addition, this will go to the Planning Commission for review, and then it will also have a neighborhood meeting. So the neighborhood within 350 feet of this property will be invited to come and meet with the developer and ask questions and provide feedback. And then lastly, it will go to City Council before it again goes into those next stages that we just discussed. So if we're looking at the area for this development, it is located south of State Highway 5, across from Commercial Avenue, across from the Shell gas station, or just northwest, or northeast, my apologies on the slideshow, of the current fire station building. Right now, if you're driving past, there's a bulletin board or a signage over here, billboard, thank you, appreciate that. Right here, and then it's mostly just open grass and wetland in this area. So what's being proposed in this site, which is about 4.13 acres, is a two-phase development project. The first phase being proposed is about 5,600 square feet of a commercial building, which currently they're earmarking for a bank as well as a coffee shop. Again, this is hometown, so if you're familiar with other product models they have in the area, think Waconia, they have a partial hometown bank, some conference rooms, and then a Mocha Monkey attached. They just started work on one similar in Carver, so it'll be a very similar product that we would be looking at here. And then the second phase being proposed is another commercial structure on the closer to the northeast side of that property, which is approximately 12,000 square foot, a commercial in space with, there's no identified partner in that specific project.
Like no identified tenants?
It would, no, nothing currently. It would just be commercial use, but that would be the second phase. And timing is also not something we have information from the developer at this point. Obviously, we're at the very beginning stages of this, so they don't have quite that information yet. And I will pull this up when we get to the discussion piece. So when we're looking at trail and sidewalk, a big piece to what we do in Parks and Recreation, there are no trail or sidewalk developments currently be proposed for this site. If you look on this, there are some sidewalks around the building when it comes to additional sidewalks in that area. There are none being proposed. This is something that we should definitely discuss as a committee, if this is something that you would like to see as part of this development or not. And then the other piece is park dedication. So there's no park identified in the comp plan for this location. Our parkland dedication fee is proposed by a calculation which is in part our ordinance and then also part by state statute. And that fee that we would come out to for a property of this size for a commercial building is about $21,000. And that is exactly what the developer is looking to do for this parcel, is in lieu of parkland, provide us this $21,000 in parkland dedication fee. We would put this towards our park dedication fund, and then at a later time, obviously as a committee, we would be looking at future park projects. Obviously, we've had a lot of neighborhood parks that have currently been earmarked. I think Brookmore is a great example, Hunter's Brook, that we know we were gonna have 5 acres, but we don't necessarily have exactly what we're going to put on there, and this fund would help us actually put equipment and amenities on those spaces. So it would go to good use.
And can you confirm this fee, this calculated fee, is it based on that full land or just like the first phase of development?
It would be based on the full property, the 4.13, the full, both phases. It's a great question.
Because they have already like purchased this land or from the city?
I can speak to if they've purchased it, and I couldn't speak to who the current or the previous owners are, but that fee is based on this entire red-lined area.
Okay.
Are these single-story, not that it matters, but just single-story buildings? Or?
I do not have that answer.
And then you mentioned it too, the park dedication fund, that's what, is in our ordinances or this section 104-30, parkland dedication. But what exactly are the stipulations around what the park dedication fund can be used to fund?
That's a great question, committee members, chair. That is all governed by state statute on what you can actually use those funds for. And state statute is pretty prescriptive on the use of those funds. It has to be new amenities or for new park development. So we wouldn't be using it for a playground replacement or to refinish tennis courts. It would be really for building new parks or brand new amenities that are new to our community. Our most recent project where we used those funds were our pickleball courts, the outdoor set that's at DTELM. because that was a brand new amenity to that location and to the community, we were able to utilize those funds. If we were to, in 20 years, build additional pickleball courts right next to those pickleball courts or at Lions Park, we would not be able to use park dedication fees for those. So it's really for new amenities that are new to the community and important to the community, and we can justify that, or for new parks. So if we have a new 5-acre park where we just have blanket land, we would be able to use those funds to put in a playground set or new trails or whatever have you into the new area.
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm again, just because from the survey with the community, like asking really like, let's part of it, let's focus on the maintenance of our current parks. So I didn't know, if this fee in lieu of a new park space, right, could be used for, either park maintenance or, as well as trails, like we were always talking about needing funding for. So, okay.
Great question.
Yeah, I think that my experience on this committee's been there's not going to be a shortage of opportunities to spend this money with the growing community and the new parks that we have. So, and, while we can't use them for certain things, the fact that we have these dollars means that we can use this for a new park, and that frees up other dollars for other things. So we have that too.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to pass it back to you, Chair, so actually
Okay.
perfect timing to bring up committee discussion just on their thoughts regarding park dedication and trail and sidewalk for this. Again, we're not looking for a formal motion, but any feedback from the committee related to these items is definitely welcome and appreciated. And I will pull up that plat map again for us to take a look at while we discuss.
I guess the one item that you talked about was the sidewalk. And this road coming in here is gonna come in across from the Shell station?
Not quite. It would be a little bit farther south than that.
Okay.
It would be closer to Commercial Avenue. I also have GIS up already for us.
But it's coming right off 5, so there's not a sidewalk along 5 anyway.
Correct.
Okay, and then, okay,
So be in this
the fire station on 80th Street here, there doesn't look like, is there a sidewalk there? Doesn't look like it.
Oh, sorry. There is not a sidewalk on that side. And I also want to say the elevation change between these two areas is quite significant. There's a pretty big hill there. And if we look back at that development photo, there is some sort of barrier structure that will be on this side of that space.
Oh, yeah, like a large retaining wall type of
Yes.
structure.
At least being proposed as part of this.
That doesn't really connect to any neighborhood per se.
It will not.
No.
So it's basically commercial it is commercial development off a main highway. So most people aren't gonna be walking here, and even if they did put in sidewalk, I think there's a marsh on the one end, so there's probably never gonna be a connection that way.
Most likely not. That does have to be, part of it does have to be dedicated to stormwater pond. And then there are significant wetlands that makes the rest of that parcel very, very challenging.
And there's nothing along Highway 5, nor is there going to be outside of downtown, is that correct? As far as of now,
Flipping the coin, yes.
yeah.
The one note I would make is that we do have the Victoria Flats, which is right across the street from us, and then we are building the current Roars project. So when thinking about foot traffic, we do have some apartments that are in this space that might want walkability in this area. However, that's just a guesstimate, just something to bring up.
So where would we, could you go back to the other aerial view? So Commercial Avenue, if somebody came from,
I mean, a crosswalk or bridge, right, or something.
I think that's part of the project, the Arboretum project, isn't there gonna be, or there's discussion about a place around here having that?
Yes,
That's
that's
78th Street maybe?
That is a great question. So as part of this development, when it originally came to us, maybe a year and a half ago, they were talking about how to make this space work. And one of the conversations that they had was at the time having a roundabout in this area to, instead of providing right in, right out access, to have a full access at this site. So there would be a roundabout potentially at this location. It really depends on the funding source and the developer's appetite to include something that large as part of this project. And obviously, through those discussions, it was adopted as an amendment to the Arboretum Area Transportation Plan for a potential option for this area. So yes, there could be a potential roundabout, which would put a crosswalk or at least a slowing mechanism in this space.
So it seems to me a sidewalk per se, since it doesn't connect to anything else and it's unlikely to have anything else connected to this, I wonder, you know, if we shouldn't just leave it to the developer. I mean, seems if they want to improve their business, if they feel that people walking there is going to enhance their business, then I think they'd put it in. If they don't think it's going to improve their business, they probably aren't. And apparently they think it's going to be something that people are going to drive to. So I guess I'll listen to what others have to say, but I personally haven't heard anything yet that would lead me to believe that it would make sense to ask them to do this from a community connection piece. So, anybody else?
I would agree with you, Larry.
Well, if this is our opportunity to have a sidewalk, and we know how hard it is to add trails or then replace, gaps. So my heart is like, okay, do I see a need for it now? No. Agree. But if the roundabout comes with a Arboretum Transportation Plan and people can walk from Butcher's Deli, because that's the other Butcher's Deli, and the Roulette's Pizza and Cabin Fever, that's the other thing across 5 from this, correct?
Correct.
Then I would hate for people to be like, well, where's the sidewalk? Down the road. So I don't know if asking them to do it, does asking them to dedicate sidewalks in their space take away from the dedicated fee that we get for the park fund?
It could. That would be a bigger question for our planner. When it comes to these recommendations they are merely recommendations, and so there will be a larger discussion with the planning team and the developer on what they can feasibly do with this space. So by having these conversations does not mean anything is set in stone, but having the community's feedback to this, whether we're including a sidewalk or not, or vice versa, anything else that you see as concern or change to this is opportunity for us to discuss it. So it's a great conversation.
Yeah,
Can we look at the Google map again?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
so Victoria Flats is way on the left here, Dwight? Okay. And, I mean, if you're gonna walk from there, can you walk, is there a connection? Is this private property back through here to get to Commercial Avenue? Can you go from Victoria Flats? Could you get to this site? How would you get there?
Well, you would have to go this way or this way, unless you look at people during the middle of summer, there's a rope that people do use right here to connect down and connect up in this area. That is not a city statute thing, that is a temporary fix for those residents. So the way we would go through this currently, if you were a Victoria Flats resident, is going up Quamuklet, and then around and by Highway 5 to make this connection as of today.
Okay, so if that's the case, you'd have sidewalk up to Highway 5 from Victoria Flats. And I can't remember, is there any, there's no sidewalk on 5 going east?
No.
So, and I guess I agree with what you're saying. Generally, I think that's how we look at things is, put the trail in now when you have the chance or the sidewalk, but that's usually, when we're talking about that, we're talking about residential development. That's either could connect one community or residential area to another. This is a commercial piece that, if we're asking them to put in a sidewalk there and then there's no connection the rest of the way, it's just a waste of, I could see them saying, well, nobody's ever gonna use it. And I get the point. I understand exactly what you're saying. Generally, on a residential piece, I would feel the same way. But you're right. This is our chance to do something. 10 years from now, when it's done, it's harder to get it done than now. But I guess I don't have a real strong feeling one way or another. But other thoughts.
That's a bank right behind the flats?
Yes, Old National, the old Klein building, yes.
Yeah, I guess I would agree with Larry as well, just because I'm assuming there's not going to be a trail along Highway 5. So once that road is widened through there, I'm not really seeing a way for people to even walk down there, unless they happen to be in the parking lot across the street and they just want to walk over and walk back. That's about the only way. They're not going to very easily walk from Victoria Flats down over to this bank.
Do we know if the Highway 5 expansion is going to have sidewalk?
I don't have that at the top of my head. I can definitely look into that and get back to you all.
Because that would be the only thing, that if that sidewalk was going to go in, then there would be a community connection potentially to that area. And then,
I don't know that about the Arboretum transfer plan either. All my trail gap research. It doesn't
Amanda, you're
matter.
my expert.
Yeah, I don't know the downtown sidewalk area. Question for you. Is this going to remain the Victoria's fire station?
So as of today and through this development, yes, it would, no matter if this was a development or not. However, across from the Victoria Recreation Center, over by Holy Family, there was a purchase of about 6 acres from Holy Family for the construction of a new fire station. Once the fire station moves to that location, that space will still remain city property, and they'll repurpose it for public works and utilities.
So if this is going to remain city land, does it make sense to put a sidewalk around the side of the fire station building to this development?
I personally don't think that's a good use of our funds, but
We're not paying, the development is paying for the sidewalks, right?
well, they'd pay for it in their, I guess the city could ask them to pay for it or put a sidewalk in, but their development is not going to pay for a sidewalk from
Oh, well,
80th Street down. And so if the city has no plans of putting a sidewalk in there, then I don't see the point of, requiring. Like I said, I don't have strong feelings one way or another, but it's not something that I would fall on a sword over to say we demand that, we really think that there should be a sidewalk here. I could see reasons for it, but I can see more reasons not to have it. So anyway, I don't know if this is helpful or not. We don't necessarily have a consensus, but it doesn't seem like there's a real strong push for this, and the planning commission may have a different view as they look at it. city council may too, but I guess at this,
I would say if them putting in a sidewalk doesn't take away from the funds allocated to the park dedication fund.
But it might impact some other negotiations, right?
Could I make a suggestion of a possible summary for minutes and
Yeah.
passing this on to the planning staff? And please correct me if I'm misspeaking at all. But if there was a connection to Highway 5 as potential as part of the Arboretum area transportation plan, or a roundabout that connects more into the downtown area, would there be interest for a more of a connector point for this parcel? And if not, the answer would be no. If then that.
okay, well, I think, yeah, I guess from my standpoint, if there's not any plan to have a sidewalk along Highway 5, then I don't care if they have a sidewalk or not, because nobody's gonna use it. If there's gonna be a connection, a sidewalk as part of the plan along there, then I would say then there should be a connection into that development, maybe not all the way, but the planning group can decide in the development where that would go, but just to have in that area, if there's not gonna be a sidewalk anyplace else, seems like it's not gonna work. And as far as all along Highway 5, I don't necessarily see where there's gonna be a trail there. We have the Lake Minnetonka Trail that's back beyond here for people that are avid cyclists. I mean, there's a place for them already. They don't go on 5 now. I mean, I guess I occasionally see somebody out on Highway 5, but there's places for people to go without going on 5 in our existing trail system. So can we go along with, does that make sense what Alyssa's suggesting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those are just thoughts at this time. Again, we're not making a decision, we're just providing thoughts or input. So just to recap, that do we have a consensus that the decision whether or not to ask them to put a sidewalk in is kind of contingent on if there's a plan to have a sidewalk along Highway 5 as part of the Arboretum project?
That's a fair assessment.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right.
Wonderful.
All right,
Thank you
anything
all.
else on that? Okay, thank you. Okay, next item is review trail route name suggestions that were made by the Senior Advisory Committee.
All right, wonderful. Well, thank you, committee members, Chair. As you may remember, at our August meeting, we reviewed potential programming of our current trail and sidewalk network to eventually create trail routes for people to utilize on their free time, really to get people to become healthier, explore walking, really just explore our community spaces. And this was generated by the Senior Advisory Committee's work plan that was set by them and officially adopted by City Council for this year and for next. So, you know, as we've discussed this, they've also gone back and they've taken another step related to this project, and they are currently evaluating routes, looking at elevation, ease of walking, amenities on those spaces, and then in addition to that, they're functioning under step 2A, which is make recommendation for trail route names to assist in identifying these trails and for marketing purposes. At the end of this entirety of this project, obviously there's opportunity to include these in our parks and trail maps, to put these on the website for potential guests or visitors or anyone that's interested in doing this, include them in Google Maps so people can utilize them on their phone, as well as additional wayfinding signage when we're looking at exploring park signage and just trying to better our park system overall. So this is just a step A as part of this larger conversation regarding marketing, but we do want to make sure that we're going through the Parks and Recreation Committee when it talks to anything related to naming our parks and our trails and any other facilities as well. So this is per city policy, and we'll go through that in 1 second, which is really the process on park naming as well as trail naming. It doesn't specifically state that in the exact language that I have here, but it does state it in the policy that trails are part of this entire process, so just keep that in mind. And specifically that policy, I did include it in the staff report, but just taking a snippet out of it so we understand what we're working from. City Council has chosen that the Parks and Recreation Committee should review all of these naming processes and then officially present them with recommendations. Obviously, you have to go through a written process with step AA with supporting documentation. That's kind of what the staff report functioned at for this evening. And then obviously, step AD, City Council has the final authority over any park trails naming. So what we decide here is a recommendation, and then obviously they take it for final consideration and final approval of that naming. So what we wanted to do with you this evening is obviously review this piece of the policy, but go through the general criteria as well. It is a lengthy policy document that I included in that staff report. It had all of our policies, all 400 something pages, and this one maybe was 3 or 4 pages worth. So just kind of picking out the most important pieces before we really get into the trail recommendations that the committee brought forward. So first, there are about 4 different naming criteria that are listed. The first is environmental, geographical, historical, and symbolic, and the last one is civic contribution. So when we're looking at environmental criteria, it's anything which is named predominantly for plant material, wildlife, streams or waterways that are adjacent to, in, or in close proximity to. I think a great example of one of these would be Wasserman Lake Preserve and Kelzer Park Pond, which are both named on physical features, hence lakes that are in that area. The second one is geographic location, thinking of parks or a facility that might be named for a school that it's located next to, a street that it's adjacent to, a development which it's located in. A majority of our neighborhood parks are identified this way. Lake Town Park, Lake Ridge Park are 2 examples. Our next criteria, or third criteria, is historic or symbolic location. So it's a park named for a historic place, a historic event, any other cultural significance. It can also be named after someone or a group that has local, state, or national significance or may have donated the land. So 3 examples that we have in our park system currently that are named with this criteria are Detelm Park, Goodman Park, and Noterman Woods. And then the last criteria when we're thinking about this policy and as we're getting into reviewing the names that the Senior Advisory Committee brought forward is civic contribution. So this is groups and individuals, living or deceased, that may have shown multiple years of service to the community that they're in, that they are considered to have an extreme positive impact to the well-being or the development of the community. And 2, well, one park that we can utilize or that uses this is Lions Park, and one feature within that park is Poppets Field. So with that quick summary of the policy, the names on the screen are what the Senior Advisory Committee has proposed to the Parks and Recreation Committee. They did note that they had a question on 8 to 12, and I can get into that in a second. And then the other one that I want to note is 4 and 5, which don't necessarily meet the criteria, but it's more of the purpose of the trail that people are walking on. It's next to the recreation center, both of those. It's really just made for a quick fitness walk, not necessarily made for any attributes or beauty that people are walking to go and see. And I will pull up all these. These were included in the staff report as well, just to give us an understanding of what features are next to these, because many of these are named after geographical significance or environmental significance. And while I do that, is there any questions since we're pausing for a moment?
I mean, so is in our review, or is the ask tonight for us to be approving these names?
we're recommending, we recommend to the council the names. The council makes the decision. We don't have decision-making authority. We ability to recommend. That's what I'm hearing.
But then is the recommendation coming from us versus the senior advisory committee?
The recommendation, the motion for this evening, and I do have the motion on the screen, on one of the slides, would formally be to recommend to approve the trail names as presented and discussed. So that gives us the ability to discuss additional options, make recommendations or revisions tonight, and then formally recommend to City Council an approval of what this committee and the Senior Advisory Committee has developed and revised as part of this process. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so, but I mean, like, we're not approving all 12 of these in terms of, like, funds being allocated to all 12 at once. Okay. I just want to make sure, it seemed like a lot to me to start with for a new initiative.
This does not mean any sort of funding is going to be
Okay.
approved. The budget has already been set by City Council. So this has nothing to do with any budgetary numbers, but when we
Okay.
talk about, you know, smaller things that we can do, like updating our website or the Parks and Trails brochure that we already publish, you know, including these on here are definitely steps that we can start taking.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. So these are just internal directional maps that we've created just to give us a good sense of what these trails are and how people might be able to use them. Obviously, there's a lot of fine tweaking that we need to do regarding the directional piece, but we really believe that the easiest way to do this would utilize our digital tools like a Google Maps platform that people can just pull up on their phone. But obviously, not everyone would like to use those, so providing more paper versions or step-by-step instructions are things that we're currently working on. But regarding the name to at least Trail 1 is related to 6 Mile Creek. You're going to see 2 trails that are going to be named after this single creek area. One is going to be on the north side. The starting point, at least those that have been identified, is Lake Bridge Park, and then it loops at Madison Park, or the turnaround point is that location. So you could also park there and do it the backwards too. But really this was based on environmental crossing over and being surrounded by the 6 Mile Creek area. Similarly, 6 Mile Creek, this is on the south side, so the starting location would be Rhapsody. The turnaround location would also be Madison or vice versa. But you're really following that stream north to south at this point. This next one, and this one was kind of a tricky one for the committee. So if there's any feedback or thoughts, I know they would be happy to hear it. And this is through the Valley Trail. It starts at Lions Park, and then it loops around the Savannah Valley neighborhood into Noterman Woods before you end up back at Lions Park. So there was some conversations of how do you make, what do you name this after? Obviously, they utilize the geographic region of Savannah Valley as part of this, but really, how can we better identify this trail? So if there's any thoughts as we're going through these, please feel free to interrupt.
I don't know if I have a suggestion other than through the valley. I would lose the through the and just call it the Valley Trail.
Oh,
I would agree.
We can do that.
to align with how the others are presented.
Easy enough. So then 4 is views of Wasserman Trail. It potentially starts at Wasserman Lake Preserve. You have the ability to walk through that park and then travel south end of Wasserman Lake through that neighborhood, and then you'd go around by Victoria Elementary School, loop up, and then you'd connect right back to that trail as a natural turnaround spot, and then head back to Wasserman. This does have great views of different areas of Wasserman Woods and Wasserman Lake, hence the reason that this name was chosen.
Again, I would try to simplify it and use fewer words. I just call it the Wasserman View Trail instead of views of Wasserman. Not a big deal, but just think it makes it more concise for if we're ever going to have signs or anything. It just takes another word out of there.
It's a great suggestion. I also note that something that the senior advisory committee also was really trying to identify ways to simplify it. They did talk a lot about just copying what a park was or what a development park was, or even for this last one, just picking Lions Park Trail, but to really avoid confusion and to not have people feel ownership of a certain sidewalk or route. They really try to avoid that, but I think limiting some of these words with the suggestions that we've just talked about in these last two are ways that match their intentions with some of these. So I think these are great. Thank you. So 5 and 6, again, this would be the fitness trail. So starting at the recreation center, and then they have a shorter route where you just connect around 18 Bavaria Road and connect right back into the recreation center. Similarly, they also have a longer loop, which brings you all the way to the other side of the county road and back around. The Trail 7 is Tamarack Lake Trail. So this starts in the Swiss Mountain Park. There is no actual parking. It would be street parking at this, just to note that. So you really could start anywhere. And then you'd connect down into the lake or the regional trail system, swing back up into the neighborhood, and then make your way back to Swiss Mountain. There is a potential shortcut down here. And then the last section, which is trails 8 through 12, these are either separate areas or separate trails or parts of previously known trail routes that are made for people that are looking for something easier, lower impact, and that is hence the reason we've called them or termed them lower impact. Originally, the purpose for these, or at least the idea around them, were to be age friendly. That word seems to be very common in other communities that have created trail routes. However, in discussing it with the community, we really don't want to tell the public what their ability level is, and really you could utilize this no matter what your age is. Really depends on your time. Maybe you don't have time to do a 3-mile walk, but also your physical abilities. So these really look at elevation change, they look at distance, and really trying to create 1-mile distance short walks for people to do under a quick period of time, or on a lower impact level. So we just tried to generalize these and didn't necessarily give them individual names because a lot of them doubled up.
But we don't, I know you said they're basing it on elevation change, but elevation change isn't listed on these to know, like, so the other trails, like, versus the length of them, are are 1 through 7 much more strenuous based on elevation?
Yeah, and I can speak to that. So we're not
Okay.
at that phase yet. These are more for
Okay.
internal purposes for us, kind of just looking through some things. So
Okay.
we have really started gathering through, smart watchability exactly what
Yeah.
these elevation changes. And once we start marketing these, putting these on the website, having that elevation change be actually listed is something that we identify as really important. And that's kind of the piece of what they're walking these routes are as well, so they know where the bench placements are, so people can have a really good idea of what amenities they can look forward to if they're actually coming to these areas: bathrooms, drinking fountains, all those type of things. Shade, structures. So great point. Definitely something we're looking into.
Okay, great.
So any thoughts related to these?
Or we're just gonna call these trails by number then?
That was the original thought. Or when we're thinking about a website type of design or marketing, you could have each one of the trails have an individual page similar to our park page, and then you have lower impact trails as one page that you have these different options for individuals. So that was kind of the thought process around these, understanding it might not be perfect.
So we're not really naming these, we're just calling them a number or low impact.
Possibly. However, if the committee feels otherwise,
I would avoid the name trail. I would call it a walking route, because we have so many trail gaps, and that when we have so many trail gap maps and trail gaps as like feedback, so I would avoid trail number in its entirety and like, these are walking routes. These are fitness walking routes. This is a low impact fitness walking route. Or like, so in my opinion, if trail is gonna be on there, like I thought this was just on here to like identify to us, but if it's being put out there and marketed, then I wouldn't use trail.
Because some of these are, you're actually on sidewalks.
Yeah.
You're not on a blacktop trail, you're on a concrete sidewalk, and that makes a difference too.
Because then you depend on the homeowner to shovel that sidewalk in the winter time too.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
versus it being a city plowed route.
And we can definitely change lower impact trail to lower impact route. That is absolutely an easy option for us.
I just put route in and stuff.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Because did the fitness say fitness trail too?
Did, but we can change that too. 5 and 6.
Fitness route.
Yeah.
That, well, good point, it solves some problems with people. Won't get them off on a tangent saying, you know, what we don't want to have happen is we don't want to, you know, all of us would like to have the trail gaps fixed or connected. But there's no point in this effort to confuse the public because these are two separate things.
Good point.
So I think calling it a route instead of a trail makes sense.
Yeah, these are walking routes.
Walking
Or
routes,
just
yeah.
a walk even.
Yeah. Yep, lower impact one, yep.
Could do that.
Wonderful.
Okay,
So those are all the ones that have been proposed. I will pull them up all at once. So what I'm hearing from the group is number 3, we're going to change to the Valley. Number 4, Wasserman View. And then removing the word trail and replacing it with route on 1 through 12. 6 mile route north, 6 mile route south, the Valley route.
yeah.
Yeah, I feel much more comfortable with that than, you know.
And then with that, if those are all the amendments this committee would like to make, we have a motion on the screen for that.
Okay, and is somebody
Does
willing
route
to make?
bother anybody that it's a road? Like Route 56 or, I don't know, I'm just,
Or walk, or is that what you're saying?
So I would go back to the page.
I don't want to make it more complicated.
No, that's all right. Now's the time to talk about it.
I'm pulling up a picture of what I saw
Okay,
in Chaska this summer, what they called
Yeah,
it,
that's helpful.
Jonathan, because they have these wayfinding,
if we call it a 6 mile walk, that sounds like we're walking 6 miles. So
6 Mile Creek.
6 Mile Creek walk might be, we might want to
Oh.
add creek.
What
oh,
did they use?
yeah, you're right. I didn't even see that until it was laid out in this manner.
So if we had 6 mile, we had the word creek in there, and then the question we're on now, do we want to call it a route or we want to call it a walk? Or we want to call it something completely different?
The only question I have on route is, and just speaking to 8 and 12, when the committee was originally talking about age-friendly versus lower impact, is you're making judgments on the use. So not to make it even more complex, but people may be able to run or bike these areas as well. So are you putting limitations on walking? Probably not. I don't think the general public necessarily thinks that way. I just also want to say it out loud as part of this discussion.
Good point.
So call it route. And then people can do whatever they want. They want to ride their bike, or they want to walk, they want to run, they want to,
So 6 Mile Creek route north. I'm just gonna say these out loud. So 6 Mile Creek route south. The Valley route, right? Because we said the Valley. Wasserman Views route. Fitness route Short Fitness Route Extended, Tamarack Lake Route, and Lower Impact Routes.
Okay, is that a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded to recommend the naming of these routes as stated. I think we don't need to repeat those. Any further discussion? If not, motion's been made and seconded to approve or to recommend approval of the proposed route names. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion's carried. Okay, thank you, everyone. I think that's all our business for the day. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Okay, second.
Second.
We're adjourned.